in welcoming to the stage my friend, my union brother, our amazing leader, President Andrew Spar.
Let's go! Brother that he's gotta rise up. Tell your sister that she's gotta rise up. When are these colonies gonna rise up? 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 Rise up. I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. When's it gonna get in my sleep?
Good morning, delegates. Thank you, Carole, for that wonderful introduction. I know you all know this, but it's worth repeating. Carole Gauronskas is the first education staff professional serving as our vice president in the history of FEA. In fact, she's the highest serving education staff professional ever in FEA history. And I, for one, am honored to work with her. We are also joined by Nandi Riley, who is FEA's Secretary-Treasurer. Nandi is only the second higher ed professor to serve in office at FEA. She clearly understands our members and our mission. It's important to point out and to celebrate that this is the first time in FEA history that we have a teacher, an education staff professional, and a higher education professor serving in FEA's 3 highest offices. So here we are, finally in person at the 2021 Florida Education Association's Delegate Assembly. I will begin my State of the Union by reporting to you that our union's position has never been stronger. 1 year ago, we came together virtually, unable to interact with each other because we were in the midst of a pandemic unlike any other we have seen in our lifetime. We were all sitting in our homes, spending a few hours together, doing the best we could to complete the business of our union. We were unsure of what the future would hold, and we were just weeks away from a major national election. And as if that weren't enough to contend with, we were supposed to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of an amazing and historic event, the merger between FTP-NEA and FEA United, which formed this, the Florida Education Association. We should applaud for that. The gavel went down on our virtual DA, and weeks later, the 2020 elections brought a new administration to Washington, D.C. It was a contentious time, but it provided us with a chance to stay focused on the issues that bring us together, rather than those that would keep us divided. Unfortunately, those elections did nothing to bring about any sort of positive change here in Florida. On the contrary, in January of this year, lawmakers started work on the 2021 legislative session, and it was clear that some of Florida's most powerful legislators had FEA squarely in their sights. Even though, for the first time in a long time, we were able to file several bills to push our pro-public school agenda, we ended up spending almost all our time, resources, and energy on a few bills that were aimed directly at dismantling us by dismantling our ability to advocate for our students and our professions. These bills targeted every one of our members, teachers, education staff professionals, higher education graduate assistants and professors, and by extension, retired members and student members. As the committee weeks of January and February turned into the legislative session during March and April, the consensus from outside and to some extent from within our union was that FEA was down for the count. The odds makers, and yes, in politics, there really are odds makers, gave us a 10% chance of surviving last session. And as the final days of session approached, the news became even more dire. We were told that deals had been cut, and we had a less than 1% shot of killing these disastrous bills. It sounds almost ridiculous and overly dramatic, doesn't it? And yet, this was the exact situation we were in as the 2021 session came to a close. But here's the thing that no odds maker, nor pundit, nor even the most experienced legislators had taken into account. When they are kept informed and encouraged, FEA members are the most capable, determined, and influential people in this state. The 2021 session ended without even one of those bad bills getting through. That's right. How did we pull off this feat? Well, the answer is downright magnificent in its simplicity. We realized the power of unity, discipline, and relationships. Prior to the beginning of the 2021 legislative session, our presidents committed to working in tandem with each other to ensure that we have a unified message and approach, and to begin or continue meaningful and authentic relationships with lawmakers. Then, just as the session was about to begin, we also decided that we would stay positive, but we would not be docile. If our union was attacked, we would call it out and expose that attack for what it truly was, an attack on the hardworking individuals of our public schools. How absurd was it that while schools across Florida were open, the Capitol building in Tallahassee was not? It's an understatement to say that anyone wishing to talk with lawmakers found it to be a difficult task. For instance, testifying before committees in the Senate meant going down to the Civic Center several blocks away and testifying via closed-circuit TV. I remember it as if it were yesterday. We were trying to find a way to cut through all the challenges of COVID and still get our message across. And that message was this: why are some lawmakers trying to take away my freedom to join with my colleagues so that I am better able to advocate for my students? For starters, we invited local union members to come to Tallahassee during the second week of session. This was a week when 2/3 of the state school districts were on spring break. There was no way to be certain that our members would come to Tallahassee, not only because we were in the middle of a pandemic, but because it was their spring break. And yet, due in no small part to the great organizing strategies by our local presidents and the FEA staff, over 100 members came to Tallahassee that week. The night before their arrival, these members got on a Zoom call to discuss the plan for the next morning's committee meeting. And once again, doubt crept in. As individuals, we struggled to imagine 100 members staying disciplined and focused on a simple, short message. But in the spirit of union solidarity, we agreed it was absolutely worth the try. Once again, our members rose to the occasion. Over 80 members ended up testifying before the committee, each speaking for less than 30 seconds, and each delivering in her or his own words the same message. They gave their name, they told the committee what they do, they told them where they work, and then in one form or another, they said, "Don't take away my freedom to join with my colleagues so that we can better advocate for our students." When public comment ended, the lawmakers were stunned. They had never seen such a powerful display of unity. They couldn't figure out how to respond. In fact, the sponsor of the bill, someone who is not easily thrown off his game, was literally shaking, and with a quavering voice said, I'm not trying to attack teachers." Now, with the bill's future in doubt, the questions everyone was asking were, how did FEA do that? How did its members deliver such a powerful message? How was it possible for them to stay unified? This was a turning point, not just for the 2021 legislative session, but for FEA. It became crystal clear that when we take time to communicate with each other, there is no limit on what we can accomplish together. When FTPNEA and FEA United decided to merge 21 years ago, the overarching reason was to create power and influence, to provide every Floridian with a world-class education. And those who embarked on merger imagined a system of public schools, colleges, and universities that would value its employees. Unfortunately, we've struggled to stay focused. Year after year, the challenges we faced were great and the resources were scarce. And perhaps just as daunting was the tendency to get in our own way by concentrating more on what divides us than on what we can agree. These circumstances diverted our attention and kept us from truly reaching our goals, kept us from being the key influencers that Florida's children need. However, it seems to me that we are finally heading down the right path, and we are finally doing it together. Three years ago, this delegate assembly agreed upon a vision to reignite the promise of a merged FEA. An FEA that would root itself in three main principles in order to build power and influence. Number one, we would increase our membership beyond 50%. Number two, we would shape and promote a statewide narrative that insists on strong public schools for every child. And number three, we would build meaningful relationships with lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. And even though we've touched on this already, I think it's worth spending a few more minutes talking about each of these core principles in more detail. No matter what our role in public education, I think we all want a voice in the workplace. As educators, we want to be valued for the experts we are and as the caring, genuine people we are and how much we care about our students, whether they get on our bus or walk through our campuses or take a meal in our cafeteria or come into our classrooms. We know what's best. We know how to make sure our kids get what they need and deserve regardless of race, background, zip code, or exceptionality. But if we want to say in how the work gets done, the best way, I would even go as far as to say the only sustainable way, is to have that say collectively through our union. It's no longer acceptable for people who work in Florida's public schools or on Florida's college or university campuses to sit on the sidelines and wait to see what happens. In fact, it was never okay. I don't know if any of you have ever been lucky enough to see the Broadway play Hamilton. Either in person, there we go, we got Hamilton fans. Either in person or like me, when it was made available on a streaming service. Or even if you heard the soundtrack. But Hamilton has had a profound effect on me and has reinvigorated me in the work I do. The song My Shot, part of which was playing when I came out here just now, is one example. Listen to the power of this specific verse. Rise up. When you're living on your knees, you rise up. Tell your brother that he's got to rise up. Tell your sister that she's got to rise up. It's past time for us to drive the success of Florida's public schools, Florida's colleges, and Florida's universities. And that can only be done if every education staff professional, every teacher, every graduate assistant, and every professor are a member of their local union. If retirees are engaged in their local retiree chapter operating in every local across this state. And if we have active student chapters in every education program throughout Florida. Because it's as simple and as urgent as this. When we increase membership, when we all stand shoulder to shoulder for public education, we increase our power and influence. I believe in the work we do. As far as I'm concerned, Florida's public schools are the best place for kids to learn. We've seen proof of that time and again during this pandemic. So we all have to speak up about our public schools, and we have to stop going down every rabbit hole the opposition wants us to go down. Every time we respond to some crazy narrative the opposition puts out, we are taking time away from our true mission, which is to speak up for our public schools, to ensure that our students, teachers, and staff have all they need to be successful. Look, all of you know that vouchers and charters are not the solution for the education of Florida's children. But I want to let you in on a little secret. It turns out parents know that too. When lawmakers hatched the idea of vouchers and charters over 2 decades ago, nearly 90% of Florida's children attended public schools. And today, that number has remained nearly unchanged. In fact, it is why session after session, year after year, for the past 20 years, a lawmaker will file new legislation to incentivize charters and vouchers, and another lawmaker will file legislation to make it harder for public schools. It's also why our local presidents within FEA have deliberately focused on promoting Florida's public schools and taking this all-consuming, useless debate of vouchers and charters off the table. We've won with this strategy, and we will continue to win by making sure our public schools and each and every one of you have the support and resources and respect you deserve. Tomorrow, we are going to hear details of the FEA's legislative agenda, the agenda for the 2022 legislative session. And like all other aspects of our work, even this marks a real change in the way we're doing business. Never before has our legislative agenda been prepared this far in advance, nor has it ever been presented to this body. What you will see tomorrow is that this agenda is clear, concise, and laser focused on our members' needs. Better and fairer pay, job protections for our teachers, opportunities for our education staff professionals, fee waivers for graduate assistants, academic freedom for professors, and better working and, by extension, learning conditions for all. We will own and drive the narrative that policymakers at all levels must respect our members and value the education of our students. Speaking of policymakers, I now come to our third core principle, that at the local and state level, we would work to build meaningful relationships with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Over the past 3 years, we have all worked hard at this. And like any relationship that is authentic and healthy, it has taken constant effort and time. Public education is and must be a nonpartisan issue. We recently conducted a poll, and we deliberately questioned Florida's voters who were Democrats, Republicans, and those with no party affiliation. The results were not surprising, but they were very encouraging. We found overwhelming support for strong public schools that provide our students with a world-class education, and we found overwhelming support for paying all teachers and support staff a higher and more equitable salary that keeps them working and teaching in our public schools rather than seeking employment elsewhere. And guess what? There was no discernible difference in the responses of Republicans, Democrats, or those with no party affiliation. We've known this in our gut, and we now have the data. When it comes to the core value of providing a solid foundation and a better future for our kids, political party does not matter. The voters of Florida support students, our public schools, and our members. It's a nonpartisan issue, and it really is something with which we can build and strengthen relationships with all lawmakers at the local as well as the state, and I'll even bet national level. And as these relationships become stronger over time, not only can we prevent bad legislation from ever seeing the day of light, but we will be able to push for what is needed to ensure a world-class education that Florida's kids deserve. Man, wouldn't that be the clearest sign that our approach is working? It was about a month ago that the governor and the commissioner of education announced an end to FSA testing, something that we have been advocating for decades. We had two options when we heard that announcement. We could wait and see what that meant and what the bureaucrats would do, or we could step up, rise up, and staying true to our core principles, we could push our way into the conversation. When our local presidents came together to discuss this, the direction was clear. We praised the announcement and demanded to be part of the conversation as to what was going to happen next. And you know what? The commissioner not only has assured us a spot at the table, there have already been preliminary conversations with the Department of Education and lawmakers on this issue. Growing membership, pushing a focused and powerful narrative, and building relationships with policymakers is how we build a lasting, powerful, and influential position. But it would be naive to suggest that this strategy doesn't sometimes fly in the face of what we are often seeing across our nation, across our state, and yes, even in our union. Forces at play trying to promote the politics of division. When the governor pushed for pay raises for beginning teachers at the expense of mid-career teachers, veteran teachers, and all education staff professionals, he was utilizing the politics of division. When the governor distributed bonus checks to about 165,000 classroom teachers and principals, I should add some of them bounced, leaving out the other 165,000 teachers, education staff professionals, and administrators who also make miracles happen in our schools every day. He was peddling the politics of division. When the governor talks about mask mandates or limiting districts' abilities to carry out their constitutional duty to keep kids and employees safe, he is promoting the politics of division. When the governor holds back billions of federal stimulus dollars meant to go to school districts, he is encouraging the politics of division. And when the governor announces that he is banning critical race theory, something that isn't even taught in our schools, and then goes a step further and misrepresents what critical race theory even is, classifying it as any discussion on race, he is touting the politics of division. The politics of division is a powerful apparatus for those looking for political or personal gain when they cannot get those gains on their own merits. Unfortunately, this is not new, and it will likely always be part of our political system. But we have the ultimate say on whether or not we engage in this most cowardly and un-American way of doing politics. Let's get clear on what we know to be true and right. Since the founding of our country to a lesser or greater degree of inclusiveness, the education of citizens has been a prominent part of the American vision. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and other founders knew that an educated citizenry was vital to the success of America. The United States of America was the first in the world to embrace the concept of a high-quality, free public education for all of its children, and many other countries have since followed our lead. However, the attempt by some to undermine and even destroy our public schools is a backdoor attempt to deny education and a chance to realize the American dream for many people. People for whom public education is the only way up. Because what makes our schools so powerful is that we are the only schools who accept every child. It doesn't matter if they live out in the country or in a big city, if they live in a big house or in their car, if they are native to this country or their ancestors came here 200 years ago or they just arrived, if learning comes easy to them or they face intellectual, emotional, or other kinds of obstacles in their learning each day. We in public education work hard to help every child achieve his or her potential. It is why so many other countries look in awe at the United States of America and ask, how do you do it, America? How do you create entrepreneurs? How do you get people to think outside the box and problem solve? How do you turn out so many creative thinkers and leaders? We do it through the work you do every single day. We do it through our public schools. So, in the spirit of all that we share, I invite you to make some commitments right now, right here. Let's commit to doing everything we can to ensure Florida's public schools are open and accessible to every child, regardless of race, background, zip code, or exceptionality. Let's commit to working together as a union and being the drivers of a public school system where all of Florida's children really get that world-class education we imagine. Now, this one may sound a little corny, but I want to dare and offer it up anyway. Let's commit to being vigilant to ourselves and making sure that everything we say or do helps to bring us together rather than foster division. Let's not allow those who seek to destroy us to use us against each other. If we as brothers and sisters in the labor movement have a grievance with another person or even another group within our house, let's be brave enough to have that difficult and honest conversation, rather than walking away from what could turn out to be some of the most important work of our lives. And since the best antidote to the politics of division is a powerful and influential union, Let's commit to asking every one of our colleagues to get in the game and stand with us. Let's ask them to join their union so that we can build a more powerful voice for Florida's public school students, employees, and the communities we serve. FEA, this is our time. This is our moment. I hope you are ready. I'm ready, and I'm not gonna throw away my shot.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. Everybody sing, whoa, 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 hey, whoa. Brother that he's gotta rise up. Tell your sister that she's gotta rise